My name's Tom+Lewis. Yeah, I was born in 1939 in a little small town in North Carolina called Chadburn. And I was moved to Elizabethtown when I was a baby, where I grew up until I was about 16 and a half years old. Everything that can go on there goes on, and nothing is new. Everything that is already has been. I was one of 16 children, and my mother took care of the children and did local farm-type work. My mother used to work and get paid in peas and beans and old clothes. My father was kind of a quiet man. I tend to think that he was a lonely man. He was 3 years old when his father killed his mother. And for 15 years, 3 months and a day, he was living from pillar to post. Family members didn't really want to keep him, so he didn't experience the comfort and the love that many people had, so he didn't seem to have it to give. I would see him sitting out in the yard sometimes with his hands beneath his chin and puffing on the cigarettes, and I would just wonder what he'd be thinking. When you didn't have what normal people had to eat or to wear, whatever, you just used what you had. And we used to put, in the place of molasses or syrup, we would put sugar in a dish and we'd put water on it. We'd take a piece of bread and we would sort of, we call it sopping, and then we would eat it. And I got this biscuit and I sapped it, and I thought it was sugar and water. And I put it to my mouth, and it was like somebody had set a fire off in me. It was Red Devil lye. Very, very poison, very dangerous. Somebody got this man that had this mule and wagon, and he rushed me to the hospital, and they saved me. My family was the scorn of the community as we grew up. And they would talk about us and talk about my father with his problems and talk about my mother with all those children. We lived in one of the worst houses in town, and the boys would tease us on the way home from school talking about the house was bent over. And it was. They didn't have any kind of real expectations of our family. I remember I used to sit on the banks of the river and just try to catch fish. Everybody could catch a fish but me. I would watch these women pull up these fish, and every now and then I'd catch a little small fish that I should have thrown back, but it was precious to me, and I kept it. But for the most time, I'd get a little nibble, I'd get all excited, I'd snatch the hook out the fish mouth, my line would get tangled in the tree, and sometimes the line would break, but for the most part, I'm sitting there fishing, making bubbles on the water. And I tell the story that as I left home later, my life sort of took on that same characteristic, and just making bubbles on the water. Yeah, I dropped out of high school in 10th grade. Someone came to me and told me this bus was coming out of Florida going north, and they were going to be able to pay us good money. They said at that time $1 an hour, which was big money for us. And so I caught that migrant bus. Our first stop was in Virginia, went on to New Jersey, New York, upstate New York, back down to West Virginia, Florida. We would work, and we had these places that they had for us to stay. We would sleep on like pallets on the floor. They promised us all this money. If I made $1 an hour, I never saw it. Whatever the co-workers didn't steal from us, the man that owned the store and would kind of take it. We went back and forth, and as we got back to New Jersey, I went to New York for the weekend, and I ran into some old friends of mine from my hometown. And they said, come on, stay with us. You got to leave that farm and come on and stay with us. So I went over there, and I finally found myself settling in New York. I was walking, trying to find, I'd go out looking for jobs every day, and it's 708 Broadway, right down across from New York University to the Village, and I went to this place called Modern Manufactured Braid. They had a sign, boy wanted, floor boy wanted, and I went and applied for it, and I got the job. And this Jewish man, Mr. Gilbert Paisner, and he rescued me, gave me a job. He got me a place to stay, and he gave me mentoring and nourishment. One thing about this man that kind of steps out of my mind, he taught me something. I would goof up, didn't have a good record of taking care of myself. And I remember one day he caught me doing something that I shouldn't have been doing, and so he asked me, why'd you do that? I said, I just did it, no reason. He said, wait a minute, there are no facts without reason. The fact is that you did it. Now I want to know the reason for it. And I've used that maybe thousands of times since then, talking to my children and other people that I work with and converse with over the years. I learned a lot from that family.
Live from the White House in Washington, the Mutual Broadcasting System brings you an address by President John F. Kennedy.
It shall be the policy of this nation to regard any nuclear missile launched from Cuba against any nation in the Western Hemisphere as an attack by the Soviet Union on the United States, requiring a full retaliatory response upon the Soviet Union.
I was drafted during the Cuban crisis. I was so scared, so frightened, and the man looked at me and he appointed me the squad leader. And I said to myself, oh, I can't run fast, I don't do much, I'm skinny, can't do much of anything. But anyway, I was a squad leader and I was afraid not to do the best I could, so I just, I did pretty good with that, and I became a radio operator. And after that, I went to France. I was stationed in France, 83rd Engineer Battalion. How I got out of there, my sister died, and so I had to come to the funeral, so I got an early out in January 1965. And so I came back and settled again in New York. And I had a major experience during that time, something that changed my life. And I was depressed and just didn't know what to do. I went to this man at the church, and he was from North Carolina as well. And he said to me, boy, God loves you, and God made you, and God will help you. You got to go and talk to God just like you're talking to me. You don't have to think of any fancy words to talk to God. You get by yourself on your knees and God will visit you. And I went and I closed my door, got beside my bed, and I began to talk to God. And as I was praying, talking, I began to feel there was a brightness all around me. And it just felt like something was just coming through my feet, and it felt like, to me, like something was cleaning me out on the inside. And I tell you, I used to walk the streets of New York with tears in my eyes, meeting all these people, holding my head down. Some people didn't see the tears in my eyes, and God put a smile on my face. He changed me there. And I applied for the police department in New York, and I could never make it. And they helped me get a job in the post office, and I became a postal clerk there. And I never worked so hard in all my life. Mail everywhere, I never worked so hard. I couldn't even spend my money just working all this overtime. I saw this sign on the subway, said, "Be a policeman in D.C." So I took the test, and I barely passed it, made 73, and came down here in August for my physical. And December the 13th, 1965, I got sworn in as a Metropolitan Police Officer in Washington, D.C. here. That particular time was rough as far as the race thing for all of us. Matter of fact, it was just a policy that black officers didn't ride in the vehicles. I mean, we walked the beat. And it was just, it was very, very uncomfortable.
So I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord.
This is an NBC News Hotline special report.
Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was shot outside a Memphis motel this afternoon. His condition is not known at this time.
We heard that morning that Martin Luther King had gotten shot, and they didn't know if he was dead or not. So then the word came out later that he was dead.
Martin Luther King was shot and was killed tonight in Memphis.
100 cities rage with riot. To avenge the spokesman of nonviolence, 39 die, 20,000 are arrested. 50,000 troops must march to stop them. Nowhere is the grotesque nature of this year's politics more vivid than in Washington. For the first time since the Civil War, soldiers must defend the Capitol.
I got this call about 7:45. Scout 33 come to the station. And when I got there, they had this big, long Army bus there. And they loaded us up in that bus and just filled the bus up. And we went up at 14th and Girard in the middle of all that stuff. I was angry because I began to have these personal feelings. I say, now here I am, knowing that there's guilt in the minds and hearts and actually of these people, and I'm sworn to protect the public, and I'm seeing people that are committing these crimes, but knowing the causal factors of some of that. There was a paradox going on in my life. It's just like you putting the opportunity for a person to do wrong in front of them, and then you get them for doing wrong. And I'm saying to myself, if they would kill a man like Martin Luther King, what would it take to belong in this kind of world? And I began to sort of question myself, which side would I come down on? People didn't like police officers. They would call them policemen pigs. And I had an opportunity to apply for another job down police headquarters called the Officer Friendly Program. My job was to go into schools and talk to youngsters and teachers about the positive roles of police officers. And as I began to do that work, I began to see so many youngsters coming in the schools day by day, and they would call me Officer Friendly. Officer Friendly, my dad is in jail, and my daddy did this, and I don't have no daddy, Officer Friendly. Can I shake your hand? Would you be my daddy? And this stuff just kept going on, and it broke my heart. I thought I kind of saw myself in the faces of some of those children. And I walked out of a lot of classrooms and really wiped my eyes. And I said to myself, well, I didn't know what I could do, but anyway, I just made a promise to God that if I could ever spend my career so I could eventually retire, that I would try to do something to make a difference. And I didn't know what I was talking about. I retired. I was retired Valentine's Day, 1986. I saw this old ragged house over there on Wiley Street. It was burnt out. And the man told me if I would give him $1,000 down, that he'd sell me the house. I wanted something that nobody else wanted, because I couldn't afford anything anybody else wanted. I had a vision there. I saw myself in a room there, and I saw children coming to me and mothers coming to me. Something happened to me. And I told my wife, I said, I'm going to open up a family service center. And she said, what's that? I said, I don't know what it is, but I know that's where I'm supposed to do my work, and I'm going to go over there and I'm going to do it. I began to put together things that had taken place in my life. And I thought about the time when I was fishing on the banks of the river down in North Carolina, and how precious that little small fish was to me. And then I thought about something that I had read in the Bible when Jesus said to his disciples, if you follow me, I'll make you to become fishers of men. And I heard this old adage that said, if you give a man a fish, you'll feed him for a day. Teach him how to fish, and he'll feed himself for a lifetime. And I said, that's it, I'm going to open up a fishing school. So I went over there, began to knock out the walls, and began to meet the people and talk with people. And finally, after about 6-7 months or so, I got the doors open, and we started the fishing school there. I didn't know what to do. I said to myself, well, what am I going to do? I went out there and I sat on my steps, and I didn't like my father used to do. I put my hands underneath my chin and I began to think. And there were 5 little girls dancing in the street, just shaking themselves in front of the boys when the boys came by. And one of them said to me, mister, what you got in there? I said, I got a fishing school. You got fish in there? I said, different kinds of fish. Can we come in? And as they began to come in, one of them asked me, one lived in the crack house right next door. One asked me, can you teach me how to be she was trying to say a cosmetologist. And I said to her, if you want to be a cosmetologist, the first thing you have to do is learn to have self-respect, respect yourself. And I reminded them of how I saw them shaking themselves in front of the boys out there in the street. I said, you're disrespecting yourself doing that. And when you disrespect yourself, you're giving other people permission to disrespect you. You see, other people treat you like you treat you. And we began to talk about those kind of things, and we began to do what we call fishing in the rivers of the mind. The need for a safe haven, for a place where children could have a safe place to come after school is very prevalent. Some of them walk in from school, out of school, and some we pick up. We have a place where the youngsters can come inside and feel safe and be safe.
You have a good day at school? You have a good day?
And feel loved and be loved in there. No matter who you are on the outside, everybody's a child in here, and we love you, and we want you to learn how to love and care for each other.
And the same thing with example 2. All we do is what?
We help them with homework.
That sounds reasonable, but ask them in a way that tries to show that it's not.
Can I ask them another question?
Yeah, you can ask them a different question.
Okay.
We have tutors that come in. We have volunteers that come in and help out.
What's important here, you're finding out more about what to have in your resume and what the job requires.
We want to augment the academic expectation of the D.C. public school systems. Children have a lot of energy. They're going to exert their energy doing something. So it will either turn out to be a positive energy or a negative energy.
Shake it to the east, shake it to the west, shake it to the person who you love the best. Apple on the stick. Why you gonna take it to the whole room?
We try to make sure that the youngsters have a good learning experience and have fun at the same time, holding on to the academic things that they need to help them make it through the school year. As I look at my life, I never thought I would amount to a hill of beans. Never thought that I would be doing anything that's worth anything to anybody. See, I'm not who people say I am. I'm whom God has made me to be. Because I spend most of my time with me. And I know me, I live with me 24 hours a day. If something comes out that is good, that is effective in the lives of people around me, I know it's not because I've done anything. I've just it just bounced off of me. I read in the 11th chapter of the Gospel of John, and there's this man named Lazarus who was a friend of Jesus, and he got sick. Jesus was out of town, and they sent for Jesus to come and to be with his friend Lazarus. And he waited until the man was dead for 4 days. And when he went there, the people were mourning, they were groaning, and they were grieving. And he had compassion on him. And the Bible says as a result of that, Jesus wept. You have the shortest scripture in the Bible, he cried. And we are taught that we need to weep with those that weep and rejoice with those that rejoice. But one thing about that is that after the crying and the shouting and the singing and all this stuff, there's work to be done. And so he asked them, where did you bury him? And they took him to this tomb. There was a large stone blocking the entrance of that tomb. And he told them to roll the stone away. he demanded that they roll that stone away. And when they rolled that stone away, he called that dead man forth. Lazarus, come forth. And the Bible said he that was dead came forth with his hands and feet bound in grave clothes. And that's when he gave the third command to the people, loose him and let him go. And that's what's going on over there at the fishing school. It's like a tomb over there, dead people walking and talking and moving about, but they can't go into place. And the reason they can't go into place is because of stones of illiteracy, stones of child abuse, stones of drug abuse, alcohol abuse, stones of unemployment, excuse making, neglect. And what the fishing school is doing, we have become stone rollers, and we're trying to roll those stones away. And I declare to you that as the stones are rolled away, that dead people really will come alive. And these children are coming alive.
Self-respect. I have self-respect.
And now they're becoming they're young adults. Many of them are in colleges now. And as time goes by, they will become stone rollers themselves, you see. The question that I would put before us all today is that who rolled your stones away? And I'll just leave it there.
See the